I support Ranjeev fully. He has my vote. He has my support because I have confidence that he is the candidate that can take what we have built over the last 6 years and take that and move that forward. You know, being a state representative, it is a tremendous opportunity and a very serious position. You are tasked with representing almost over 90,000 people that have varying different views and opinions, and some people who have voted for you, some people who haven't. And beyond that, you're casting votes that represent our community, but also impact the 10 million people that live in Michigan. So it's a very serious position, and it's been an honor of a lifetime to serve in the Michigan legislature, to be one of 110 members currently serving. It's just a tremendous opportunity, and I'm very humbled by it. And so part of the reason that I'm supporting Ranjeev is I know he will hit the ground running. He has the experience, the talent, the expertise, and the sheer work ethic to make sure that he can deliver for our community and get things done for the people of Canton, Buren Township, and the city of Belleville. And so I'm enthusiastically supporting his candidacy, helping him along the way, and I ask that my supporters and those who have been with me since day one, lend your support to him. This is an opportunity to get to know him a little bit better, to hear why he's running for office, how he wants to serve our community and serve in the Michigan legislature. We will get started here. So with that, Ranjeev, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself and say hi to everyone?
Hey everyone, again, thank you so much for joining. It is an absolute honor. My name is Ranjeev Puri. I am the father to 2 small boys who may or may not be sneaking onto this video at some point during the call. I am the husband to an extremely talented small business owner, and I'm also the son of immigrants. I make it no secret. My goal is to fight for a better Michigan, one which we are all proud to call home, a place where you want to raise your family. We want to move towards a Michigan that works for everyone, regardless of your background or belief. And as a parent, I want to provide all opportunities that we can for our kids. Living in a fair and equitable society, that's what we all want. And so now, as COVID has come into our lives, it has only exposed how important these very issues are. I have seen firsthand the effects. Many members of my family work in healthcare. As I mentioned, my wife owns a small business. It has turned our society on its side. It has exposed inequities and disparities all across our state. It has showed us just why heading into 2020 is now more important than ever that we elect leaders who are ready to step up and tackle these issues and find real solutions to make Michigan work. And so that means having difficult conversations about the multi-billion-dollar hit COVID will cause to our state budget. And that means ensuring that all public schools are providing a quality education regardless of zip code. And that means that regardless of your race, your sex, your religion, your orientation, your health, or your wealth, that this Michigan works for you. I'm running to be your next state representative because I believe I can be a strong voice for our community. I will listen to your concerns and get things done. I'm running to be a true representative of our neighbors in Canton and Belleville and Van Buren Township. It's a responsibility I would take very seriously, and if given the opportunity, as you mentioned earlier, I would hit the ground running. I would approach decision-making by weighing all options and checking in with community leaders where a specific bill or policy would be impacted. But at the end of the day, I'm a role model to my 2 small boys, and any decision or vote I make, I have to come home, look them in the eyes, and explain why that was the best for all of us. That responsibility weighs heavy on me to always lead with dignity and morale.
We're getting a few inquiries, Ranjeev, about how you are actually adjusting to campaigning during COVID-19. So if you could just give us an update on, how your campaign has adjusted with the latest and how you're doing and how you're adapting to all of this.
Yeah, COVID has completely changed the way that we campaign. I am a first-time candidate, and I tell you what, if you after you run in this cycle, I think you're ready for almost anything. But we have moved everything online and over the phone. Our campaign takes this outbreak very seriously. Even before any orders from our governor, our campaign shut down all in-person activities, because the interests of public health absolutely take priority to anything that we're doing over here. And so we moved all of our events to become virtual, like this one. We are engaging people online, over the phone, by text message, by mail, just whatever way we can virtually. And so it's a lot tougher to meet people this way, but we're still working very hard to get our message out and connect with voters directly, but albeit in a safe manner.
It's amazing. It really sounds like you're keeping up all of the voter contact that's needed to really engage the electorate, to get your message out, and to push as hard as you possibly can to make sure that people are participating in the upcoming August election, and making sure that we are all voting in this election. Even voting has become a topic of debate, and whether or not we should all be able to vote by mail. And so with that, it sounds like you're really ramping up your voter contact efforts. What has your experience been like so far as you're engaging with different voters across our community?
I just want to reiterate that our campaign absolutely feels that voting by mail is the most efficient and safest way to vote. We are urging everyone to please, get your application, get your name on the absentee list if you haven't already, and get your applications returned. If you have any questions on how to facilitate that, please feel free to reach out to our campaign. But to get to your question, one of the best parts about running for office is you get to meet thousands of people in your district, people that come from different walks of life that you may not have run into if you weren't running for office. But the number one issue by far is COVID-19, and more importantly, how we're all surviving. Our neighbors worry about the future, like how our schools will operate, if they're going to have a job, if their businesses will remain open, or if our healthcare system is enough. And on top of that, they're questioning if our democracy is in peril. But thankfully, so many of our neighbors have stepped up to help. We have real momentum on our side. People all across the district are taking notice and getting involved. We have seen a surge in voters requesting ballots by mail, which we're so happy about. As we stay safe at home, more of you have asked about how you can help. We actually raised money to make sure that our police and firefighters and first responders have the PPE they need. We started a drive, and we ended up raising over $5,000 to hand out PPE all across the district to make sure that our essential employees, had the protection they needed as they went back to work.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, thank you for everyone for stepping up to help out with that. Laura Mortier from Canton has a question.
Hi, I am a lifelong resident of Canton, and I actually work for Canton Township, specifically in leisure services, which is just a fancy word for parks and recreation. So I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about your opinions on the importance of recreation and parks, and the community health that brings. And then I specifically am the director of our Youth and Teen Center. So kind of a shoot off of that is how you plan on engaging our youth here in these communities.
Thank you for everything that you do. And we also love our Canton Parks and our Parks and Rec department. I think that we do a fantastic job of putting on special events throughout our community. My personal favorite is the Canton's Liberty Fest, which I'm so sad is obviously canceled this year. But we also love the farmers market, because I can walk there from our house in Cherry Hill Village with my two small boys. And my older son is a little bit more outgoing than me, and he can usually sweet talk the vendors to get a little bit extra from them. But we love going there. But I think we should continue to push activities and events to foster an environment for young adults and young families. I'm also on the board of the Arts Partnership here in Canton, which helps run the Village Theater and the newly minted Arts Factory. I think a robust arts culture locally here can also bring about a lot of business and activities for all generations. But I absolutely think that those are things that we need to focus on.
Education was the issue that I ran on. It's the issue that I believe the community cares most about. Just in my experience, going door to door, talking with voters, talking with parents, making sure that we have great public schools has been a priority since day one. And so even now under COVID-19, where schools are closed and we're doing remote learning, we're very much worried about a learning gap and making sure that our students keep up with their studies and that they don't fall behind. So I recently saw that you, Ranjeev, were endorsed by the Michigan Education Association, the MEA. Congratulations, that's a huge endorsement. what about the MEA, what does MEA endorsement mean to you? And could you touch on education a little bit for us?
From the moment we started, our priority was to fight for a more equitable system where all kids have access to a quality education. And so, as you mentioned, Kristy, earlier, our district is underfunded, and we need to ensure that we always have representation that's fighting for more funding. My boys are getting ready to enter the public school system and are going to start at Workman Elementary soon. And so we need to be able to look at all school-age kids across this state, look them in the eye, and tell them that we are doing everything we can to fight for their future. And that's what the MEA stands for, and that's what we're aligned with as well.
And Buren Township trustees Kevin Martin is on.
First, I'd like to know, what can we do to bolster the public schools financially? And what kind of state oversight do you think may be necessary to ensure equal educational opportunities to all public school students?
That can partially be answered with one solution. I think what we're fighting for and what we need to push for is a weighted foundation formula, which is the way that schools are funded. We need to make sure that every student gets what they need, to succeed. And that's what the weighted formula stands for. So a weighted foundation formula model, ensures that students with the most need get the most resources regardless of zip code. And that's where we can, push those more equitable solutions.
The students are forced to learn remotely from home. And as we know, a lot of students don't have access to laptop computers or anything like that. So I was wondering if part of your plan would be to provide computers for these students, not just because of the COVID, but this is how we communicate now. A lot of things we do now is via internet.
I want to make Michigan a place where you want to raise your family again. And what we need to do in order for that to work is we need to modernize our infrastructure. We need to make sure that we're fighting for broadband internet connections across the state. And that means that we're moving to remove any educational achievement disparities between districts, regardless of zip code. And so, part of, as we come out of COVID and we look to legislator to enact, new regulations and laws and new processes, we need to use this as a building block to ensure that as we move forward, our solutions are more equitable and that we're not seeing these disparities between these districts across the state.
Overall, what would be your approach to improving public education?
COVID will impact our budget significantly. Early estimates said potentially over $1 billion cut to school aid funding. But adjustments can be made. We need to find alternative funding sources and models. We just talked about the weighted formula earlier. We also, need to revisit the role of for-profit charter schools. How does one state in Michigan have 25% of the country's for-profit charter schools? It's because 90% of the charter schools in Michigan are for-profit. That just doesn't make sense. We need to enact teacher-led reform to let our teachers do what they do best, which is teach. We need to work on restorative discipline practices and close racial educational achievement disparities across our district. My goal is to fight to make sure that all kids, regardless of background, belief, or zip code, have access to a quality education.
Thank you, Ranjeev, for standing with me and with the majority here in our district that oppose that model. What are your thoughts about the topic of trying to keep our kids safe, and especially with the rise of gun violence and guns in schools?
Actually, a very personal issue for me. My distant family has been directly affected by gun violence. This issue of mass shootings, especially in our schools, is something that we only deal with our country. Our country is the only country in the world dealing with senseless gun violence issues. My wife is the local lead for an organization called Moms Demand Action. For those that are familiar with it, for those that are not, it is an organization which originated after the Sandy Hook shootings to advocate for more common sense gun reform. And I've recently received their Gun Sense Candidate distinction. The reason this hits home for me is a story from about 2 years ago. But my older son was 2 years old at the time, and I went to pick him up from school. That day when I picked him up, he was completely out of it. He was just sad, confused, just didn't know what was going on. I figured he got in trouble. I went up to the teacher and I asked her, said, hey, did he get in trouble today? What happened? She actually told me that today he participated in his first active shooter drill. And for those that aren't familiar, for a 2-year-old, what that means is you're essentially locked into a janitor's closet. It's dark. You're not really told what's going on. You're just left confused. Everyone's scared. You just think you're in trouble. And again, so when I picked him up, you could see it in his eyes. And to take it a step further, as I talked to him that day and as I looked him directly in the eye, I could see in that fleeting moment that he forever lost the innocence of thinking school is a safe place. That is not the society that we need. That is not what we need to be preparing our 2-year-olds for. And to make things even worse, how our society has responded to these issues is that in the beginning of this school year, my wife and I, in our back to school package, received a coupon. And that coupon was for a bulletproof backpack. That is the solution that society has provided to this problem. And that's not gonna work. And so we absolutely need to find solutions, such as upgrading our infrastructure and making sure that all schools have Sally ports. But we need to find solutions to make sure that senseless gun violence and all gun violence is removed from our schools.
I couldn't agree more. We've been trying to pass red flag laws for a number of years in the Michigan legislature. We have a gun-free violence caucus that is headed up by one of my neighboring colleagues and really trying to move that policy forward. So thank you for all of your work on that, Ranjeev and Nidhi. Unfortunately, Michigan is experiencing one of the worst states of unemployment that we've ever seen. I've seen numbers as high as 25% are now unemployed. And so we are trying to access the funds that are owed to those who are in the workforce and who have been affected by COVID-19. So Ranjeev, if you could just touch on what you've seen on the unemployment issue and some things that you would address on that.
As it stands currently, it's unsustainable. There are far too many people unemployed. And part of the reason is Republicans for decades have underfunded and slashed technology in the unemployment insurance agency. And it's no wonder now that people are waiting weeks or even months to get their unemployment checks. We need to make sure that important departments like the unemployment agency get the support they need. That includes staffing phone lines, making sure websites and online forms work, and that requests are processed as fast as possible. Because we also need to make sure that there's enough funding for the UIA to maintain all the requests for an extended period of time, because we don't know when this is going to end. We do have money right now in Michigan that we can use for unemployment. The Federal CARES Act can be directed to the UIA, but we need people to get money in their pockets as fast as possible.
My office has been working day and night to make sure that our residents are getting the money that's owed to them as fast as possible. So if you or somebody is in need of unemployment or trying to navigate that system, please let me know and we can help expedite that process for you. Small businesses in our community are also facing a very uncertain future and are really struggling during this time. So what would you say to small business owners who are working so hard just to keep their head above water and to stay in business?
My wife is a small business owner, and we feel this pain firsthand. There are things we can do right now to help our small businesses. I mean, individually, we need to buy locally. Let's support our local small businesses wherever possible. The state and federal government have resources available for small business owners. We can get through this. We got to get through this together, though. The Paycheck Protection Program, or the PPP more commonly referred to, is helping some businesses right now. And I know that there's some other federal programs that are available through the federal SBA. But I also think that this is an opportunity to revisit our supply chain structure and have a broader conversation about just the way that we produce and shop. And so let's prioritize companies that are creating local jobs to boost our economy as much as possible.
So could you talk a little bit about your specific stance on healthcare and what you would do to address it as a representative?
Yeah, sure. Healthcare is a right. We need to work towards a model that can provide everyone coverage. I know that there's proposals, at the federal and the state level to help reform our current system, but COVID has shown, if nothing else, the inequities that exist in our current system. It's too expensive, and it's not working for healthcare employees either. My mom was a nurse. My brother and sister-in-law are physicians on the front lines. We sent our hospital and healthcare employees headfirst into this crisis without the proper protection. As it stands right now, no one's winning. It's too expensive and it's not working for everybody, and we absolutely need reform.
Jesse Marcotte from Belleville has a question for you. Jesse?
My question comes from the city of Belleville, and I'm sure trustee Kevin Martin from Van Buren Township would agree with this as well. Belleville Lake is the only all sports lake in Wayne County, and as such plays a critical role in our community, both recreationally and economically. I was wondering if you could discuss your thoughts on keeping our lake clean with respect to contaminants such as PFAS and phosphorus.
Yes. Thank you for your question. Thank you for joining tonight. But yeah, as you mentioned, our district is home to the largest lake in Wayne County, Belleville Lake. Over the last few years, unfortunately, we've seen a major rise in PFAS and algae blooms in the lake, and we got to contain and remove both of those. And so I support polluters pay legislation to hold corporations who pollute our water accountable. The wastewater treatment centers are the main culprit here, in my opinion. And our government agencies are working to make regulations more strict. A lot has been done, but there's still a lot more to do. A story that I tell all the time is how, as I mentioned, I have two small boys, and my younger one just turned a year. But as it stands right now, I'm not comfortable giving my kids tap water out of our own home in Canton, in Michigan, which is home to the Great Lakes, in 2020. And that's absolutely not right. And so I pledge that I will be a fierce advocate on making sure that our state's water is clean and that it can be used for economic and recreational activities.
That's why I was happy to make sure that we have a strong Belleville seawall down there, and that we are making sure that lake is preserved for a long, long time.
And thank you for all of your work on the seawall. We're excited to open that park back up here soon.
Is to please register and request your ballot by mail. Voting by mail is easy, and I can assure you it is very secure. Next, if you're able, we like every other campaign, our campaign needs volunteers. Our volunteers are working every day to make sure that we're reaching enough voters all across the district. We have people making phone calls, writing postcards, sending emails or text messages, or just asking friends to vote. A lot of people don't know, but actually the most effective way you can really get your message out is having friends tell their friends about a campaign and the upcoming, election dates. And then obviously, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that, if you can afford, we need contributions. Unfortunately, the downstream effect of COVID is the fact that elections just cost more money. We have an army of people who are ready to go door to door and canvass and talk to everyone at their doors. But in the absence of not doing that, to make sure that we're prioritizing the interest of public health, we just have to use more paid communications, such as mailing people. And so those things cost money. And so unfortunately, the campaigns just cost money. But, and then, another easy way to help is, we have our yard signs coming in. Anyone whose neighborhood allows or is able, we would love if we could use a little bit of your space to put up our yard sign, just to help show your support for our campaign. And all of this information that I just rambled through is on our website at www.voteranjeev.com, and we'll make sure we share that link with everyone. But again, and I know we talked about a number of issues very rapidly here, and we weren't able to go super in depth in a lot of things. But please, everyone, feel free to reach out. My personal cell phone is on my website, and feel free to reach out, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that we weren't able to get through tonight.
Is there anything you can address as far as making sure that our students have internet access, that broadband is available to all of our families?
We need broadband access across the state for many reasons. We need to compete with the economy of tomorrow. We need to ensure that Michigan is attracting the talent and retaining the talent to compete for all those startups and the innovation that's going to happen. The only way to do that is to prepare people through our public schools with STEM focused fields to make sure that we have the talent in the state. And that is done in today's economy through internet access. And so, especially as we've seen the impacts of COVID, and I think Trustee Martin brought up just the inequities that we see and disparities we see about internet access across the state and kids not having a level playing field. Those are things that we need to solve to ensure that there's an equitable solution for all kids, again, regardless. I know I sound like a broken record, but regardless of zip code, that all kids have a quality education.
We've been working with No Fault to try to help preserve the benefit for those who deserve it. It's a unique system that we have that unfortunately is changing. I know that there was going to be talk during this legislation regarding trying to, as we say, fix the fix. And with COVID happening, I know that that discussion has kind of slowed down a little bit. So this doesn't go into effect until, I believe, June of 2021. But if the current legislation doesn't pick this up, then what would be your stance?
Yeah, I mean, listen, this is a very nuanced and complex subject, but one of the things that I admired about Kristy's service was her ability just to stand up for what was right. Amongst a very controversial vote, she stepped up and voted against this new legislation, and I largely would agree with that same vote. You know, I think that there was a lot of benefits that our old system provided, but you know, unfortunately, this has become there's been a lot of political gamesmanship and political theater involved with this particular issue. I think where we need to find ourselves is to get enough people in our legislature who want to go back to a system, the system that worked for many people. And what's unfortunate about this is a lot of people didn't realize they needed it until it was too late. We had good coverage here, and I'd like to see that restored because I've seen a lot of people who've been on the short end of that stair in their situations.
And like you said, I was one of those individuals. I was hit by a drunk driver. I had no idea about no fault until I had to use the services. Luckily, I didn't have to use it for just a year and a half, but some are fortunate to be in the same shoes that I was, to where they need it for the rest of their life now. So
right. And I wasn't familiar with your story. Thank you for sharing. You know, and it's just unfortunate because the compromises and sacrifices that we made in order to get that legislation passed, I think far unfortunately outweigh any of the benefits that we will be seeing. And so I do hopefully look to be a part of the legislature as we quote, you know, fix the fix.
What is your approach to kind of coordinating and working with all levels of government to really deliver for our district?
Yeah, I'm all for coalition building. I think one of the things that a lot of people are just frustrated to see is that, you know, the terminology I used earlier is that there's just a lot of political theater and political gamesmanship that's currently happening, and we're not really finding solutions to any real problems that we're having here. And this applies to all levels of government. And so ideally, you know, we want to move past these partisan titles and to be able to find a solution where we're all working together and to build trust in our communities that our government is going to be there and provide solutions to help our communities. I can pledge, I'm biased, but I'm a very level-headed man, and I'm looking to just work with whoever else is willing to work towards a solution that's going to better our wonderful communities here in Michigan.
And that's something that really stood out to me too, is how you really approach leadership and ideally governing with an open mind, and how you can really work to bring people together and hear all sides of an argument to hopefully reach consensus and have the best outcome possible. So it's one of the reasons that I'm supporting you and hope to see you as our next state representative. Again, thank you everyone for joining us this evening. This has been an amazing experience for our virtual house party. Thank you for the time.
Thank you to everyone who joined. Thank you for giving me a part of your beautiful Michigan evening here. I'd just like to leave everyone a philosophy that kind of carries me through this election. As I've mentioned repeatedly, I'm the father to two small boys, and I'm a true believer that this election cycle in 2020 is going to be written about and studied many years from now. And so when my boys grow up, or their kids grow up, and they look back and they study, you know, this election, and they come to me and they ask, hey, you know, in 2020, when so much was on the line, when justice, misogyny, you know, immigration, so much was on the line, what did you do to fight for our future? And you know, what helps me sleep at night is knowing that I'm going to be able to look them in the eye and tell them that I did everything in my power to help fight for a Michigan that works for everyone. And that is my pledge I've made to them, and I made to myself, and I make to all of you. And so thank you again, everyone, for joining, and please do not hesitate to reach out, and I'd love to answer anyone's questions offline. And thanks again, everyone.
Thank you for being a voter. I know all of you will be, and we know the most effective way to make sure that others are voting is to tell our friends and family about the importance of the election and the candidates that we are supporting. Again, thank you everyone for joining us this evening.